and I'm all shaking. So mad. I was writing this little prompt down, and I'm like, oh. Kelsey Lee Inishia sitting on Janina's said excuse me German Dasha Che Kia Ani Dashanella. Hi, my name is Kelsey Lee. I'm dark streak wood people born for rock gap people. My maternal grandfather is German and my paternal grandfather is Kiani, Towering House Clan.
And I am Adrienne Lerma. I'm Nakaidinea, born for Nash Ejitabaha. Tichini Dashnala Kozafana Deshiche. I grew up here in the Navajo Nation, born and raised in Tuba City, Arizona.
I guess what projects have you been working on since I last seen you from like January, right?
Yeah.
It was January when we went to that Native Women Entrepreneurs work session.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Oh my goodness, the flies!
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been working on a lot of projects, but one of the most prominent projects is the Missing and Murdered Dine Relatives Initiative. And that work, it's Navajo Nation specific within the borders of, Arizona, New Mexico, bordering on Utah. And right now, MMIW is a big thing, missing and murdered Indigenous women. There's a lot of focus on that issue right now. The statistics are crazy, so many of our mothers and sisters are going missing. They're being murdered. We're one of the highest percentages of people who suffer violent crime. And it's really unfortunate that a lot of people haven't been made aware of what's going on. And one of the big things that I like to point out, because I think it's important, is that the majority of perpetrators who commit these crimes against our women they're non-indigenous, they're not Navajo, they're not Native American. So it's like 88% of perpetrators are non-Native. And so I think that's an important factor, because sometimes people think, oh, this is a Native problem, this is a Native women's problem, it doesn't apply to us, it doesn't affect us. But it does,
Yeah.
And people like to say, or people like to think and behave like, oh, well, their own men are doing that to them, that's their problem. But when in fact it's not really, it doesn't line up with reality. So we're wanting to bring awareness to that issue. The work that's going into it is the ultimate goal is to create a database, a digital database that can be accessed and analyzed over time. Right now, when people ask, well, what are your statistics within your region, it's really hard to find that information. A few reasons why is that there hasn't been a specific entity gathering this information. And the second thing is the information that has been gathered was gathered on pen and paper. So there's no actual digital format that people can easily,
look up and reference.
Yeah. So information is key right now. That's step one. And then there are other, actionable steps that will follow, and we can talk about that more.
Okay, yeah. And I guess, so just like for some background, like the missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls movement has been going on since 1991. It started in Canada, where they had a Women's Memorial March in Vancouver, and then it's been happening every year since then. And there's just a lot of different, I guess, projects and movements following that. Like a lot of artists are creating visuals to represent like how many women and girls are missing through like dolls, and then there's the red dresses. And I guess, let's see, all the way until like 2019 in January, like Savannah's Act, which was originally introduced in October 2017. I think the purpose is to incorporate and coordinate between federal, state, and tribal law enforcements and local law enforcements, which is really a big deal on any like legal issue, because I think it used to be that Navajo police couldn't arrest or even give a ticket to non-tribal people, so the tourists driving by can do whatever they want and have no repercussions at all.
Yeah.
And that definitely leads into the murdered and missing women.
Yeah, and a lot of it, it's not even just tourists, it's like people who come here to work. A lot of contractors, people who are working in the mining industries, you know, they come from the outside and they have the privilege of knowing that their actions are not going to be, they're not going to be counted against them sometimes, you know, and it's really unfortunate. So it leaves this, you know, this huge vulnerable population on in tribal communities, on tribal lands. And, you know, it's been really great that so many women, so many people have been rising up to bring attention to this issue in Canada. You know, major props to the First Nations people and to a lot of our northern relatives, because they've been gathering data. They've been, you know, they've been compiling information. They've launched multiple campaigns to bring awareness and to start holding, you know, everybody accountable and hopefully deter more of this violence from happening. So I think it's great what they're doing. And, you know, here on the Navajo Nation, we see that we're lacking organization in that respect. So that's why the Missing and Murdered Dine Relatives Initiative has cropped up, and it's really being led by a lot of amazing people, such as our council delegate Amber Crotty, Nate Brown, council delegate Nate Brown, the First Lady. Her initiative is also tied to you know, different abuses suffered by Navajo women, and so a lot of those issues are becoming more prominent here on Navajo.
And then even in like March of this year, 2019, Arizona State House Bill 2570 like established a committee to gather more information on the missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, and also to determine how they can reduce the violence. And I think that last part of the bill was key, because looking up different things, a lot of the bills that I've read through, they were just to gather information and statistics, and this one was stated to find ways to reduce that violence. And I think that's a key factor, not just like, oh, these are all the murdered women. It's like, okay, now what, you know? And then this bill from Arizona is saying, well, now we have to figure out how to stop it and reduce it drastically.
Yeah, an important thing is like putting a face on what's going on right now too, because, you know, a list of names is one thing, but to see the faces of people who are not accounted for right now, people that are missing, you know, these are mothers and daughters and children, you know, who have families that deeply care about them. You know, one thing I thought was really kind of cool that was going on Facebook was a lot of women are posting up this meme that states, you know, if I go missing, if I disappear, I'm not out partying, I'm not out having a good time, I didn't just abandon my children and family, you know, I didn't just drop everything that was important to me. If I disappear and you don't know where I'm at, you need to look for me, because that's not something I would do. And I think that's important, because that's what happens sometimes. People think, oh, she's out having a good time, or she ran off with a man, or, you know, some nonsense like that. And it's like, no, you know, we have our priorities straight. A lot of us Indigenous women, you know, we have our priorities straight. And if we go missing, it's not because we wanted to. It's not because we ran away from anything. And so I like how that's been going around too. I'm like, yeah, you know, like that's what needs to be said, and more attention needs to be drawn, because we get written off so easily, so often.
As just being like, you know, drunk natives not knowing how to behave somehow.
And there's a lot of us that don't even drink. You know, we don't partake. And even though we're not going around saying, you know, because we're not going around like preaching about it or telling other people what to do, that doesn't mean that, you know, we're not doing our part to not partake in those behaviors. You know, some of us choose not to. And I think anyone can identify, because, you know, stepping away from, you know, and just being Indigenous or being just being Navajo, as people, I think everyone can understand the golden rule. I think everybody, can understand what it means to be a human on this earth and what our responsibility is to one another and to our communities and families and the land and all that. I think we all know, and well, maybe I'm assuming too much that we all know, but it's kind of common sense, that you can't just hurt other people and think it's all right. And, I think maybe we need to start talking about that more and unpacking that, because we have this huge issue,
Yeah, like
that
happens. And like you were saying, it happens from other people, not in our tribe. And that happened this past school year, actually, in the fall. She was working because she's a welder, and you travel for welding, and it's a big thing here on Navajo, probably most other reservations too, because welding is really good pay, but you have to travel to do it. And so she was with, I think, a cousin or her sister out east, and just some other random person who she probably never talked to at all came up to her hotel room and murdered her. And she's from our community. She's like a year or two younger than me, and she just had like a 6-month baby, and one of her students was my mom's student, and it just really affects the community so much. And it's just one stupid act of somebody murdering somebody else. And like it's not even, it wasn't even on the tribe. It was her out doing work. She wasn't out partying. She wasn't out, just abandoning her kids. She was making money for them. And it's just like you can't even go out and make a better life for your children because there's the danger of someone murdering you.
Yeah. No, it's real. My sister, she's a certified welder, and that job is dangerous. I used to work in the the construction industry before I went to college, and I was a pipe fitter, and I worked with my dad's crew. And a lot of the Navajo crews, they're families that work together, so they kind of take care of one another, and they seek jobs together, they travel together, they cover costs together. And so that's how my family was. We're a family of pipe fitters and pipe welders. And my dad told me that, you need to be really careful when you're out there, because some of these men, they're convicted felons, and you need to watch your back. You need to be careful, stay close to us. If we're working night shift, you're not going anywhere alone. You need to escort. And so he would send me with another male coworker to, take me from point A to point B. But most of the time, we just all stayed together. But he was really clear about that with me, and I was really clear about it with my sister when she decided to join the industry, because I got out. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So Kelsey and I have been talking about some other issues that relate to this topic, and we got a little bit of tea, and I'm going to ask Chelsea here to spell, how do you see what dynamics do you see that occur every day that contribute to this problem?
Like, domestic abuse is major.
And like, what do you see linking, domestic abuse in our communities to missing and murdered, Indigenous women and girls?
It might not just be just the women who are murdered in domestic abuse cases, especially for Natives. I've seen...
That's the tea. What do you mean? Elaborate. I'll give you the floor.
Well, you always see Native women. They're like, we walk in beauty. We're tall. We're strong. We're independent. We're beautiful. We have all this pride. And then there's these women who are like that, and they represent it. And they're like, we're strong. We're independent. But once they fall in love, and it's like everything else just falls away, and there's one guy who's crap. He treats them like crap. He like mind games, gaslighting them, and they fall for it because they're in love, and it's passionate, but passion isn't always good. There's being in love and being passionate in a good way, and then there's just this fiery rage of passion that isn't always good. It leads to like murder, suicide. And it just annoys me because these women, they're like, oh, I'm so independent. I make my own money. I do all this stuff. But then they're like bottle feeding their boyfriend. Not literally, but, it seems that way. It's like, why are you carrying this man? You're strong, you're independent, but doesn't mean you have to carry a man too. Emotionally and financially.
Yeah, I mean, they say love is blind, and I think...
Oh my goodness, buy a pair of glasses?
Yeah, no, I think when people do fall in love, they do get, like, so... They start to excuse some of these behaviors, or they fail to see red flags, and then it's too late.
Or they want to fix him. Their love can heal all his broken pieces back together, and he'll be a nice, strong man you always knew he could be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the tea.
The tea. I just can't stand... Oh, I'm shaking. I'm so mad. I was writing this little prompt out, and I'm like, oh, I need chocolate. Because it's not just like it makes me mad. It makes me furious because it happens to my family. I see it happening to my family numerous times. Like, she's had multiple boyfriends, and on many accounts they've been emotionally manipulative. And then even after their true colors show, she comes up with excuses. She wants to save him. She can help him. What good is getting married if you're just going to drop him the first time there's something bad happens?
Yeah.
But, and then that goes into a whole nother issue, like when she was trying to find help for him, there was no options. Like, she either called the police on him, got a restraining order, and sent him to jail. And that was it. There weren't any resources or clinics or anything to help people with those problems. And it's a big array. It goes from, like, emotional abuse when you're younger to being mentally disturbed with being a psychopath or narcissist. And there's a big spectrum on, like, where the person lies. But that doesn't mean you put yourself and your family in danger for love. It's just annoying.
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is such a serious issue, and I'm just kind of like, I don't want to laugh too hard. You know what I mean? It sucks. I've seen it too, and I know it's frustrating, and you don't want to see your own family going through that. I have 2 sisters, and I am very protective of them to the point where it annoys them. They're like, leave me alone. I can take care of myself. And I'm just like, yo, like, no, like, you need to make good choices because no one else pays for those choices except you. It hurts you, and I don't want you to be in that position. And, you're right. There are a lot of strong, proud Native women who fall into this category, and
it's like they're too strong and proud to admit they were wrong for loving this person, and then they just have to keep up the front. Because, once they admit that they were wrong, then all of a sudden they're no longer strong or something.
That's a huge... That is true. That's true. And I'm ashamed to say that, like, I've been through that myself. And I consider myself to be highly intelligent. I consider myself to be very skilled. I am very proud of who I am as a woman. But, I have been in a bad relationship before, and it sucks because when you want to get out... Okay, my story is, it sucks. It's awful. I don't even know if I want to tell it, but I feel like I should. And I'm not going to give all the gory details, but I was in a bad relationship, and when I let my family know, they were like, it was that same narrative of like, you can't quit, you know what I mean? Divorce isn't okay, breaking up a family is not okay. You need to work through things. And so, I didn't tell them what was all going on either because I was ashamed. And the problem stems from, looking back in hindsight, I see where the main problems were. And it had it had nothing to do with him being a crap man. It had everything to do with trauma. You know, he was in the Marine Corps, and they're trained to kill. You know, they're trained to be violent, to be aggressive, and to be authoritative. And there is a patriarchal hierarchy in place where they honor dominance. They see that as leadership. And being in a military family is rough because, you know, he went to the war in Iraq, and when he came back, he was a different person than who I had fallen in love with. You know, he and I used to be like, we were the best of friends. People used to see us as like an ideal couple. You know, we were the main couple in our group of friends, and everyone was like, oh my goodness, they're going to be together forever. And we used to be the life of the party together. You know, we had a lot of fun. He always had my back. He was always like the guy to protect other girls and stand up for other girls who were in trouble. And he and his friends they were good guys like that. And that's what I really respected about him. And then he goes to the military, he goes to the war, he comes back, and he's different. And I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't really understand what that trauma looked like. I didn't know what PTSD was until I had to live through it. And it tore our friendship apart. It tore our relationship apart. And he suddenly was someone who was more prone to anger. And it sucked because you have this strong bond with someone and you love them. And yeah, you think that love is enough. You feel like you can fix them. You feel like you can power through it. You always feel like things are going to get better. And it didn't. And I was in that relationship for 12 years. And it was hard when I finally had to walk away. And, you know, it sucked. My family was not supportive of it. They were like, you need to work it out. You know, your grandma would be so ashamed of you. And I was like, no, my grandma would be proud of me because I'm standing up for myself. I believe I deserve better. I believe I deserve to be in a healthy relationship. And I honestly believe that things got better when we separated. It was better for the family. But it took a lot of, I had to stand up, and I had to be strong. And it was really hard. But I did it because I knew that we couldn't continue on that path anymore. It wasn't healthy, and it wasn't good. And luckily, he felt the same way, you know. He was man enough, you know, to see that we both deserved to have better lives. We were not working. We were just butting heads all the time over everything. And a lot of it had to do with power dynamics. And there were dominance issues there and control issues there. And we came to an agreement, and we ended things amicably, where we decided that the lives of our children was the most important thing, and we were going to focus on that, and we were going to heal, and no matter what, we would always be a family. But we had to be really mature about it, and a lot of people aren't mature about it, you know. There's
like those baby mamas and, you know, baby daddies.
I mean, it could be different, and I think it was different just because of the way our relationship had formed initially. We were good friends, and it's like, well, you know what, that's okay, you know. You have to get to that point where it's like, you know what, it's okay, maybe this isn't going to work out, and maybe we're going to do better later. And I see him healing and doing better. I'm healing, thank God, and I'm doing a lot better. And, you know, I eventually remarried, and I'm married to an amazing man now who...
You guys are so cute together. Like, that's the kind of passion that I want to see in a relationship, the way you guys are just loving to each other, and it's not like, oh, we had this big fight and then this amazing makeup sex. Like, no, that's not the right kind of passion.
We're not like that. We're too old for that. we're too old for that. We don't have time.
But you guys are like always supporting each other and always doing each other's, you know, like going with each other. And now, you know, he's watching your little boy while we're doing this
and your
work.
husband's watching your daughter,
yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of how it should be.
It's good to have like the support and the friendship, and then, you know, the relationship, I think.
Yeah.
And
like,
I'm not afraid to, like, if my friend's complaining about a man, I'm like, just dump his ass, leave him. It's like, oh, but I love, like, you feel bad, you know, he's manipulating you emotionally, just leave him, whatever. And it's a fear of like being alone for some people. They're not comfortable with themselves, and I think that's the worst time to get in a relationship.
It is. I like making my own money.
Mm-hmm.
I like being able to save. I like being able to have control of my household and to have peace there, you know? And I that's all I ever wanted, you know? That's all I ever wanted was a healthy, happy home, you know, where people are happy to be there with me and where we can have conversations and eat good food and listen to good music. And, you know, like, I don't want a lot. And so I was looking forward to that. And that's when I met Shababe. And I love him. And he changed my life because he is the kind of man that I think is rare. Mm-hmm. I've only met a handful of men like him where he does not subscribe to toxic masculinity. He just is like, I don't care about that. That's stupid. You know what I mean? He sees where it comes from, and he understands how it's formed and how it's a form of control and how it's destroying society. And he's just like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I think my husband's the same way, but not as philosophical as yours is.
Supportive men in relationships make that relationship thrive because then it's both people who are building together.
And it has to be a two-way street, you know? You have to be supportive of them if you expect them to be supportive of you. You can't just demand all the attention and demand all the support and expect them to stay.
Yeah. We have a blended family, and so now I am the mother of 7 children. And when we got married, we promised one another that we are going to take on that responsibility 100%, you know? And we had a traditional Navajo wedding, and we sat with the medicine man. He told us, from this point on, there's no division between you and these children, where it's not like, oh, this is my stepdaughter or my stepson, or it's like, no, this is my Yaj, you know, this is my daughter, this is my son. And you care for them and love them as your own. For the rest of your life, you're going to provide for them. And so I made that promise to them. I told them, I will be here for you 100% for the rest of your life. I will be your support system. I will help you get from point A to point B. You know, I will guide you. I will discipline you, and I will teach you things that are going to help you become a responsible adult. You know what I mean? A productive adult. And they were just kind of like, really surprised because they were told, you know, by the world that, you know,
there's a stepmom and she's evil, wicked
monster.
Stepmom.
Yeah, and I'm just like, no, that's not me. I'm not like that. Sorry. But, and he did the same for my 2. You know, he told them that I will act as your father. I will protect you. I will guide you. I will care for you. You know, and you can trust me, and you can. And if I ever step out of if I step across any lines that make you uncomfortable or fearful, you need to tell me. You need to tell your mother, you know, and we will manage that. And so we've always had that open communication with the kids, and we've always had those loving conversations with them. Like, we do it all the time because we see how this world is structured, how America is structured to really, like, push people into a mold and spit them out and let them behave how they're going to be so they become productive consumers and dependent on, you know.
Yeah.
It's not what we want. You know, we're really trying to bring them back to these teachings that we have that are foundational to who we are as a people. And they're really simple, you know. They're really simple, and they're really good, and it's really like a blueprint for how to have a good life. And that's how we live our lives. And I think I've been really fortunate in meeting a man who subscribes to that same ideology. Now, cookie time. Join us for another talk session, another tea spill.
Tea spill? Oh my goodness, get all hot on it again. Still trying to calm down from that.
Yeah, so if you want to see more, like,
share, subscribe.